I think it's quite an honor to start immediately what the Organization for Youth Education and Development has to do. It is, I think, an implementation immediately. And I think it would be a good start. And I'm asking Commissioner Diamantopoulou, I think, to give an input what is seen from your side already done and what is on the road, seen from the European Union, but also seen from the member states or for the European states even, as far as you can give some input on this.
Concerning the youth unemployment, yes. Particularly, yes. As far as employment and education, as far as education is concerned, unfortunately, to my point of view, the European Union has no saying. I mean, it is a 100% national issue, and it has to be a national issue, but at the same time, when education issues are so much linked with the labor market, with the economy, we must find the European links and make things easier. And it has to do with the mobility, with the recognition of the diplomas, the recognition of occupational rights, etc. This, as far as the education is concerned. On the other side, the employment issue, I think that the European Commission has very well understood that this is the major issue, and two new initiatives have been announced. The first one is Youth Guarantee. As I have already told, it is a 6 billion project, and what its main goal is to support young people not to be outside employment, training and education. So it is a motivation, and it has to do with the national, of course, administration to work on that and to have concrete results. I repeat that I believe that the major issue is growth, and on this area, I'm afraid that Europe has not much to say.
Okay, that was not very optimistic, but maybe the President, Staffan, seen from the Economic and Social Council, can give us a more optimistic approach in the cooperation of the social partners?
I think Anna is, of course, formally absolutely right. I try to be more optimistic, perhaps. And of course, even if it is now in the hand of the member states, you can see that the member states inside two things. First of all, the 2020 strategy, where they can agree on common goals, even if they then have to go home and implement. And as sometimes Barroso says, the President of the Commission, it's very easy to go to Brussels to agree, but more difficult to go home and implement. But there you have at least two goals. To, first of all, to succeed in people leaving school without any, before they are educated, so to say, where we have a problem in all member states. Also that to get a higher level of people going to university and higher studies. But let me also add, since we, as a body where we have the social partners and others, we have different platforms for more also, even if it's perhaps not contribute to the really employment, we have also the question of informal, non-formal learning. where we have in member states and on European level platforms, associations, also for all people, not only youth, but also for elderly and the normal citizens to participate in language courses or training for whatsoever. In my country and some Nordic countries, you have a special system for public organization built from other associations for these so-called non-formal learning. But I think also the initiative, and I like very much that you talk about education and development, because the development is a part of what we need to achieve. But I hope that the member states want to do more.
Thank you very much. I think I might ask President Constantinescu, because I think he had a lot of academic functions, political functions. I may add, you have been the chairman of the Danube Rectors Conference also, where we met for the first time. It's long ago, may I say. That's right. But I think, seen from the view of a new member state, of a transition country, and so on, what is your comment on this education and development issue? Because for sure it's not enough what is happening, but in Romania and in all the countries of Southeast Europe, there's an impressive development. Can we have any micro for? Here the wire is too short.
After a hard period of transition in my country, very, very hard period, especially for people who pay the social cost of reforms. I have finally also optimistic approach. I think the world community possesses the technological, financial, organizational and human capabilities to fight world poverty and assure modicum of real food security to its entire population for at least a decade. But in order for it to become efficient and sustainable, it should not be viewed only as charity or aid. Is necessary for a new political principle to be adopted: universal education. Universal education allows all citizens to benefit from an essential requirement: self-reliance and self-development. Thus, it is required a shift in emphasis from managing natural resources. Is my job, I'm a geologist. I focused on the natural resources, but is necessary from managing natural resources to developing human beings. It requires a will and the determination to accelerate the natural progression of human development that has so dramatically enhanced human security over the past 50 years. This aim must be treated as an issue which is essential to the future peace and stability of the entire world, not for a country or other country now considered to be in crisis. An intense effort for citizenship education is needed in order to convince people that principle and process of development is the same for the individual, family, organization, nation state, and for entire world, whole world. At each level, peace and stability are indispensably required for development. Today is not just nations that have an opportunity to advance rapidly. Humanity as a whole is poised for a quantum leap forward if in a global social peace, the opportunities for everyone are exponentially greater. And finally, in my opinion, such a principle of global economic development is not anymore based on money accrual and on the blind race for enrichment or on survival, but on human dignity and cooperation between free, responsible individuals.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for this global view, or for the view for citizens of the global village, as I may say. But I'm asking for the understanding. I think three male oldies and Mrs. Diamantopoulou have commented, but we shall do it for the younger generation. So I might ask the two youngsters here, because youth development, it's your future. I think it's our, we are in the past, you are in the future. I think, what are you expecting? What might be your contribution? How shall the process working? Ladies first.
Everybody who has not white hair must be young. Or women can be yes. To our interest.
So I want to go back to this question: who is to blame when it comes to youth and unemployment, and particularly graduate unemployment? What I keep hearing is that basically, even after we get a degree, and even if after we study all this time, basically we won't get a job, and we can try, and we can try to have a master's and another master's and another PhD, and even with 3 masters and 4 PhD, we won't get anything. That's the sentiment that I have here, and that's the sentiment which is pictured in the media and the press and everywhere. Is it true? I'm not particularly sure, but also I think that it's this environment which pushes us to be to have so many masters and so many whatever, and you know, and then we get out of this and we're overqualified and we don't find the job. So my question is, do young people necessarily need all these diplomas, and also how is it could it be their fault? Could it also be the graduates' fault? I mean, it might be a bit provocative what I'm saying right now, but you know, could it be the graduates' fault when they come out of a diploma and expect to have a job right away, and they don't want to take jobs which are, you know, there are numerous amounts of graduates who get out of university and they don't expect to take a job which is not matching their diploma with their skills, and so they prefer being unemployed in a way rather than taking a job which doesn't meet their expectations. And so I think we talk a lot about, you know, the European level. Is it a European level? Should policies be a macroeconomic policy, or should it be more of a national policy to promote youth employment? But I think we also need to look at graduates themselves, and also, Mr. Nilsson, you were saying something on civil society and how civil society should pressure political leaders because they're the decision makers. But you know, should they only pressure political leaders? I mean, it's also a question of businesses themselves. It's businesses, and you need to have some incentives somewhere to accept young people, and to sometimes, you know, we were also talking about sacrifice. You know, where is sacrifice? And yeah, that's my point of view.
May I ask you to present yourself? I think,
yeah, sure. My name is Laura Richardson. I work at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, and I'm still currently a student.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm a graduate. I graduated in 2011, and since then I was involved in a job search. And talking from my experience, I was very optimistic and very positive during my studies. Unfortunately, the reality that struck me after my studies, was not so optimistic, and to be honest, it was very frustrating. So the question, I mean, actually from my experience, what I think is there's a problem, is that on one hand we have education and you know, academic training. On the other hand, we have professional life and professional career, and I feel that there's a huge gap, that education is not preparing graduates or students for the real job and real life. So, but on the other hand, then if you look at the job market, there are jobs, there are many jobs. And as was pointed on the lecture earlier, there are jobs but no people. So this comes to the question of decision making, and maybe there should be more awareness between students about the decision making and exactly, I mean, what field of study to choose and what is needed out there when once I'm graduated. So is it a problem with the education itself, or is it a problem with the students that they are not well informed about the future and about their needs? So I think there's need to be a lot of answered, and the whole situation is frustrating. I would end up there.
Thank you very much for your clear statement. I think it would be difficult to create jobs that you can join the House of Lords because I think it's not a place where you get employment. But it would be interesting. England especially is a country where you have a lot of immigration in the past. I think quite a mixed society with difficulties and so on and so on. Maybe the separation of Scotland is a chance to create additional jobs. Yeah, but this is another question. We don't touch this. What is your view?
Well, the main reason that I welcome this initiative is that I think there needs to be a far more creative debate about the reasons for youth unemployment, for a lack of youth development, and what the longer term or even the short term solutions might be. I think that even where there are discussions taking place, or there are political initiatives, particularly in Europe, they are to some extent looking backwards rather than forwards, and trying to bring back the solutions of the 80s to youth unemployment and development, rather than looking at the world as it is today. It seems to me that the kinds of challenges in tackling youth unemployment and the kind of challenges in tackling the youth citizenship development and the other things that Emil mentioned earlier seem to me to be very, very different today than they were even a decade ago, never mind 20 or 30 years ago. Young people today of all classes, all backgrounds, from all countries, are going to spend more of their lives travelling around the world. They are going to spend more of their working lives dealing with digital technologies, and they are going to spend more of their working lives in different kinds of jobs than previous generations did. People are no longer, not just in Europe, but anywhere else in the world, people are not going to have the same job, the same profession, the same career for life. Those jobs and careers are going to change. I think the majority of young people under the age of 25 in the world today will at some point in their lives work in another country in the next 40 years. And I also think that the fact that the current generation of young people going to university this year are who could mostly be 18 years old, were all born in the year that the internet went live. It brings a whole new dimension to the sort of careers, education, opportunities that they're going to need or going to want. And I think the job of institutes, academic and policy institutes like ICD, but also the job of politicians, and to some extent the job of the European Union, should be to start thinking about this change that is taking place. So that's the first point I wanted to make. And the second point I want to make is that I think this is a huge problem in Europe, but there are also massive changes taking place elsewhere in the world as well. It's not just Europe that's aging. The most dynamic economic power in the world, China, is aging as well. The proportion of people over the age of 65 living in China is going to double between now and 2025 because of the one-child policy of the 80s and 90s. But elsewhere in the world, the proportion of people in the population under the age of 25 is going to dramatically increase. The median age of people in Africa today is 19.4. So half the population of Africa is under the age of 20. And that is going to have a dramatic impact, not just on that continent, but on the rest of the world as well over the next 10, 20 years. So I think there are huge demographic changes taking place in different continents and between continents. But I also think that lifestyles are going to be so different for the current population of under 25s that politicians and institutes need to be much more creative about what the longer term opportunities might be for development. And that's why I welcome this new initiative today, because I think there's a need for far more creative discussion on this and not just looking to the older solutions.
Thank you very much for pointing out this situation. For our overaged European society, there's only one exception, that's Kosovo, because 70% are beyond 30. That's one of the differences. But here, looking to transformation countries, I think it might be very good to ask Georgia, for example, what are the perspectives of the young generation in Georgia under the difficult circumstances where the country is existing?
Yeah, I guess as a typical Georgia, I go more global in that sense, in terms of the perspectives that I could bring.
Is this a solution for all Georgians?
I guess that it is, because most of the solutions that one can find right now are all about global citizenship in many ways. I don't really see that much of a difference for big and small countries. And in that sense, the discussion, the way it happens when it comes to the employment, development, youth, and education, the whole perspective of a mental revolution in that sense needs to be seen in the larger context. And then the demographics are a good example of that. If we speak about the solutions when it comes to educational needs, employment, but then aging communities as well, I think it's obvious that you cannot find in-house solutions to that, and it's all interconnected in that sense. So if you speak about the demography and education in that sense, the nexus between mobility and then freedom of exchange comes into equation definitely. So how much confidence different components of the global sort of community and the family right now have of having more of a mobility being part of the reality rather than restrictions in that sense, it's a big question. It all connected with the politics, with security, with the migration policies of different entities, but ultimately serving the needs of demographic decrease of the younger labor force and an increase of the labor force elsewhere that needs to be well thought out with more of a forward-looking approach into that. And then comes into equation the question of education. What type of education we're talking about for future times? How much it is well tailored with the realities of economic development, landscape of that in terms of the scope and dimension of the content into that, and how much we actually invest now in different parts of the world of preparing labor force that could be available there for the future jobs, so that you have confidence of its preparedness to that type of the jobs, confidence that its labor force can actually enter your market and then be of added value to you in terms of preparedness for that. And we have spoken about African countries, we can speak about the Latin American countries, many other parts of the world, who are small in scale as Georgia, but then we have presence of having that perspective when it comes to the quality development of the human resource of the country that could be part of this global citizenship in that sense and benefiting itself, but then both benefit to all. But then to conclude with sort of different nexuses that we speak about, the youth employment and development, it's basic arithmetics of the economy as well. And then the infrastructure when it comes to the labor market, infrastructure in legal terms related to that. As much as restrictions we have and protection and regulations with labor market, it's harder for younger generation to find jobs. That's as simple as that. Whoever works now is protected more rather than whoever wants to enter labor market when you have too much of a regulated labor force. And we have spoken about the intergenerational, and it was an excellent presentation of the complexity of the issue previously. Is it an intergenerational conflict, or it's a different contract based on different type of solidarity of different age, basically, that we have to, of 21st century, that we have to speak about rather than in classical terms? Because the rigidity of the labor market are much more on the right flank of the policies in that sense, in my mindset, and that shows, I guess, in the way I speak about that. But as much as competitiveness and freedom of entering the labor market is more assured than the economy, young generation is better off. That's why I guess we find in many countries where we have too much of a rigidity and regulation of labor markets that young people find themselves more in temporary jobs, in jobs that are not commensurate in that sense to their educational levels and preparedness perhaps for those jobs, because the labor market is so overprotected they can't enter it basically at this moment, even if the jobs could be otherwise have made more available for that. And then to conclude, and not to be long on that, when we speak about education, it's very hard when you are young and you enter sort of first hand your higher education to be very pragmatic about that. You are in the exploring stage. It's sort of different interests that you might have. But a very practical lesson one can learn, I guess, in terms of the sequences of education is that while having the first degree sort of being at hand and achieved, it makes all sense, I guess, to take a bit of a time for some practical experience one can gain so that one can have more clarity where is it that you want to direct your further educational opportunities, if that's the case. Is it necessary at all as an investment into your future? Because you can be even better off of not investing in that from practical points of view, but be as much pragmatic as possible when it comes to that. But it's a two-way street. I mean, educational institutions themselves, and here comes the public role of a government or international organizations as well, they need to be encouraging more research and forward-looking practical tools for the development of the institutions for educational purposes as well, that they are becoming more forward-looking with this changed landscape of the global reality, basically, and not to be so classical sometimes in educational opportunities, which are more tailored, I fully agree, with more for 80s and 90s perspective and early 2000s, rather than what we experience experiencing as a massive change of international system, of economy, social interrelationship, and politics as well. And by the way, Asian educational institutions are raising, in terms of the interest field for many students, now going in the other direction of getting educational language skills and cultural exposure. And that is all based on the economic dimension of the growth, where and how it is all happening. It all comes down to very, very core issue of pragmatically important issues ultimately. And economy, which needs to be profitable for it to function, actually.
Thank you very much for mentioning, I think, one subject which is extremely important for countries which are in a better shape than others. Because if I'm looking especially to the academic educated, they are getting only employment by projects on short term. I think no more sustainable jobs. I think it is for one project, in 1 year, 1.5 years, and then they have to change, and so on and so on. Even I think is a special situation for journalists. I think they are getting not anymore to be established at the newspaper for a longer time. I think coming in, writing only for lines and not for real work, and then being out. But so far, one has to be the last. I have to apologize to you, but we are getting now the right comments. Please.
Okay. I'm Adonis Yiangou. I'm the Secretary General of the Cyprus Green Party, very small Green Party indeed. But it is a good question. Who is to blame? To me, nobody is to be blamed. We are living into revolutionary times. The world is changing. We have globalization. We are in the internet era. We have climate change facing us. We have energy revolution coming. So things are changing. It is a revolution. It reminds me a lot of what we have studied about the Industrial Revolution. A lot of the traditional professions will disappear and new ones will appear. And I'm very optimistic that the new ones will be a challenge for the young people. Yes, it is the changing moment, and you will be facing a lot of problems, but the opportunities belong to you. Even educational reform is coming. We don't have to enforce it. It's coming. I was reading the other day about that most of the new coders, the programmers, the best ones, do not have university education. They are doing it because they are self-taught. the internet is giving us all these tools nowadays. I mean, even if you're in a graduate program, and nowadays you see that you'll need extra tools in order to get the job that you wish for, you can get into the internet and get some online education, more specifically on the aspects of the education you are looking to follow. So I'm optimistic that the change is good, and it will, and the future belongs to the young people. We're just on that changing moment, and it's difficult.
President Constantinescu wants to continue the subject.
Yes, I want to continue your idea. Who is to blame? Using politically correct language, we can accuse government, sure, in first place, and business. But in my opinion, it's also on the one hand, it's science and technology. On the other hand, freedom and democracy. Why? Because I want to confess, the greatest part of my life was under dictatorship regime. In a dictatorship regime, like especially communist regime, don't exist unemployment. Don't exist unemployed. All people have a job. I passed all my life in university. At the end of university, each graduate receive a job, but is obliged to pass all his life in this job, because the country, my country, I talk about Romania, was a large prison. Don't possible to change the post in other country, don't post to change the job inside in the country. The freedom changes in this approach. A new reality is a consequence of freedom and democracy, and it must to accept to pay this. About science and technology, it's clear. I coming here from Trieste. I am also member of Board of Trustees, World Academy of Art of Science. We talked also about the same subject. Each technological progress have an immediate result, lost jobs. This is the reality. Why? Why? Because I insist about education, but about we need to change approach, to assume risk. In my opinion, the serious project is achieved through requiring people to assume more risk individually and to organize their adequate protection themselves. It's not easy to accept this because it's more easy to accuse others. But it's also necessary to accept a global vision. Current society and the future society is uncertainty, is not certainty. Dictatorship regime assure certainty, is based on certainty, always certainty. More assured is the future. Maybe not so clear is the past changing, but the future is assured in immobility. This assumed risk is a good premise for individual project on life.
Ironically, you may say freedom has its price. President Staffan.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm too much concerned about titles, so you can call me whatever you want. Even pre-name. But I have some reflections. And first of all, I think the social partners in the social dialogue, more or less on the member states level, can do more in order to find temporary, at least, solutions to get more jobs for young people. I can make a controversial question, say, is the trade unions, which is member of my committee, are they protecting the members' interest or also the members who could be a member in the trade unions? I think they cover all. But they could do more in order to get more easy to get jobs. The second reflection is I think we need to keep in mind the different perspective at the same time. We have been in crisis before. We have had a high level of unemployment now and then. I think we are in the end of the most difficult time, and we are hopefully coming back to better growth, hopefully green growth, which could also create. At the same time, I think we have to understand, we talk about sustainable jobs. If you go to the culture sector, you don't have sustainable jobs. You go for auditions, you go for to temporary performance here and there. It's very difficult, but this is a structure of this. And you said, Mr. President, that you don't keep one job for the whole life. One of the third reflection is, when I have one employed in my farm because I'm away so much. So when I pay the salaries, I have to pay additional around 35% as a tax. The government, the society need the money, that's sure. But I know also that the Green Party in some member states, they have talked about to shift the taxation from labor to perhaps nature resources in order to have a more sustainable development. This is something also we probably could discuss, and which could change rather rapidly if you really urgently, because I think it's an urgent question to get jobs for young people.
Thank you very much. Do we have enough time to open for questions?
Yes, I'm Teresa Palomar. I'm from Mexico. I studied computer science, and I am an MA student here in the ICD. And well, thank you for all the effort that you are doing regarding to the unemployment, especially in youth. And during the conversation, brings to my mind a question that my 10-year sister asked me about why she should study a degree. And when I was a child, I remember that I did the same question to my father. And as Laura said, he asked me, well, because you are going to have more opportunities, because you are going to have a job and you are going to have a better life. But now I think with all the problems that we are facing, that answer is not probably the best answer. So my question is how to encourage young generation to study, not just to say, well, we are trying to do something again, in terms of the unemployment, but how to prevent to have a scenario like as you say, that to have the jobs but don't have the people. How to encourage the young generations to do the effort to study in the frame of this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think on this side there was also somebody in the background, please.
Okay, thank you. My name is Paul Europo. I'm also a master's student at the ICD. I'm from Nigeria. Yeah, thank you. So my question is directed to President Staffan, and I want to hear your perspective on what is the definition of the EU government on who is an European youth. And does this definition include youths that have legitimately migrated from various parts of the world, from America, from Asia, and are studying in Europe to have a good education? That is the first question. And the second one is when decisions and policies are being made behind closed doors at the EU government, do you take in cognizance that there are youths in Europe who are from other parts of the country? Because I was very interested that President Constantinescu bring to light the global dimension of this problem of youth unemployment. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Who is the next? First row.
Hello, my name is Keith Berman Henderson. A brief history. I go to Keele University in the UK. It's the UK's most sustainable university. I do a law degree. I'll graduate in May. And also I volunteer at the Citizens Advice Bureau. It's in an immigration dispersal centre, so I work with many immigrants. I'm also the external mooting officer of the Bar Society. At A-level, I did maths, economics, philosophy, and psychology. Thank you. Thank you. I would like to focus on creativity, mobility, and also attitude. First of all, students aren't really given the kind of initiative that when I leave university, how many jobs am I going to create? You know, I'm a 21-year-old individual, and I see myself competent enough to employ someone of all ages. Students aren't necessarily pushed in that direction. They're kind of showed that, hey, I need to get a job, I need to fill out application forms. I don't need to design an application form. I don't need to, you know, design a website. And I think this is a problem, because if you look at America, the people that own Facebook, or the person that owns Facebook, they're university dropouts. You go into a university classroom, and students, some of them don't even want to be on the course. They're there because their parents told them to be there. You look at the courses offered by universities. Did students have a say on the courses that were offered? Attitude, you know, I worked shifting pallets in a warehouse company, but that taught me so much about logistics. It doesn't necessarily fit directly into my legal background, but I still learned so much. I learned about health and safety regulation. So students need to understand that you can get experience from every dimension. Mobility, you know, I meet students from all around the world. University is a chance for networking. I have, let's put, say for example, African students. After they finish, their visa expires, they can't come back here. If me and him had a business idea, it's diminished. You know, I even went so far with Jason over there to say until air flights are a public good, we'll never be able to harness the true kind of global hemisphere, you know. Lastly, I would like to say, on the EU, you know, I studied EU law for a year. This is my first time in Germany. This is the realities of what students are doing, you know. I feel it's like building a house. You give students the book how to build the house, but you don't give them the cement, you don't give them the bricks, the mortar, and what's needed. It's like the front door's open, but the back door's closed. You know, the EU really needs to, or the people that are making the policies, like, when was the last time you spoke to a 15-year-old youngster? Because my attitudes and their attitudes are totally different. I'm 21, that's 6 years. When you're making the policies, when was the last time, you know, you had someone in the office who's going to be directly affected by this new legislation? I'm Kiefer Berman Henderson. I'm going home tomorrow, and I've really enjoyed this conference. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Who else? Last opportunity. Oh, first row. Milady.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Nicola from the Focus Foundation. There's one thing I think that you're very advanced students, all of you, but you are very specialized. We have in Geneva many students, interns in the United Nations with bachelor's and master's degrees, and you say to them, and what are you doing? I'm getting experience in the United Nations. And are you being paid? No. It is a certain slavery that people are being prepared for because they don't have nearly enough of a holistic vision on our life, I think, like you said. And this is maybe where education is slipping, is a lack of a holistic vision. And so you don't accept to sweep the street or move the pallets because you've been told you must do something else. But we all have to be able to do everything and accept it, I think. Maybe.
Thank you very much. I think we have also a lot of international. We have also a lot of international organizations in Vienna. There are a lot of trainees. They are getting paid nothing. And what is the perspective? You are totally right. I think United Nations for a longer time is not enough to live on. That's right. Who is the next? I think the lady here, first row, was also. Okay, beg your pardon.
Thank you. I'm Giovanni. I'm from Italy, and when I was curious because I heard that to the question who is to blame about this huge youth unemployment, there's nobody to blame. I think there are some people with a big responsibility because as Minister Diamantopoulou showed in her presentation, there are countries with different statistics. And my country, Greece, Spain, have huge unemployment among young people, whereas Germany, Luxembourg, the Netherlands don't. So there is a responsibility, and we have to blame, and that's what we have been doing in Italy and in Spain and in Greece. Maybe not channeled through the right way. I didn't vote for Grillo, I didn't vote for Berlusconi, I voted for the Democratic Party. But then I realized that after the election, the reaction of the Democratic Party said, they're all too populistic and they're anti-Euro, but they don't really even put the effort to understand what the people really want, so they ask for it. So I think there are some huge responsibility as a European and national level for the situation we created right now. And if people that are responsible don't assume their responsibility, we'll never move forward. And we'll have the Golden Dawn and Beppe Grillo and whoever else coming up, and it's a huge threat for Europe. So I wish that people and politicians will start assume the responsibility, and then after that we'll move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think first the lady, then you.
Hi, I'm Elvira. I work here at the ICD. As you have seen, one of the things I do is I'm the photographer. Where are you from? I'm from Spain, so I'm gonna speak from my perspective. I'm over 25, so I guess I cannot speak anymore in this really young generation. But I think I'm still close to it, so I can say something.
Be happy.
I think we can spend a lot of hours saying who we should blame and also who is responsible for that. But at the end, I think who is going to be able to go over this is going to be the young generations, and we need to accept that the situation has changed, and of course it's not okay to work for free, but I can start crying because everyone has an iPhone and can do the best picture that I can do with this camera, and I can lose my job because, okay, everyone has a camera, or I can just adapt to the situation, and I think what we all have to do, and it's unfortunate that we have to make such an effort, but who told us that because you study a career, you will go in to get a job the day after? And then the careers, okay, it's great to have a job the day after, but it's not only for job, it's also for enrichment, for the development of society, it's for sustainable development. So I think this is part of a general crisis too, of a change, and we just need to adapt to this. And I think the responsibility now is the young generation that has it, and we need to work for this. We cannot just say, I studied that and I deserve to have a job and cry. You need to go and to have new initiatives to try to work, and I mean, it's our responsibility. Really, it's great that we're discussing that, and I think, of course, institutions, government needs to support that, but we need to bring the solutions. We need to do something ourselves.
Thank you very much. The last, behind, last row, last speech.
I always get the short one. I'm the last guy. You know, I think, you know, like unemployment, youth and unemployment. And youth is just one component of unemployment. I think people are starting to realize that I'm 65, and in that generation, baby boom generation, we have a lot of people who are unemployed now, and they have to live in a state of unemployment. But they have certain experiences, certain skills that people are starting again to recognize and hopefully try to utilize. So not only do you have a dilemma as far as youth employment is concerned, how do we engage the totality of society and experience in the effort to move forward? So I don't think it's really, I know it's not prudent to just concentrate on just youth employment. Of course, it's a very volatile issue. I have a 13-year-old at home. So, Mr. Henderson, I will be bringing my grandchildren and my 13-year-old to my place of work, you know, and I'm sure that most of the people on the panel have grandchildren or children, you know, and themselves as grandparents, I'm very concerned about the future, you know, and also for my 13-year-old son, the youngest son that I have. And I think this issue is one that affects us all in a very deep and thoroughgoing way. But the only point I want to make is that we have it on both ends, the youth and also the people who are in the, I don't know, the last parts of their life. What do they call it? the twilight, the twilight of their lives, you know. So we have to find some middle ground here to exploit the experiences, you know, the knowledge of the people who are in the twilight of their lives, and also address the question of youth unemployment. That's all I want to say.
Thank you very much. Also, thank you for your participation. I think there were some straight questions. I remember that to you, President Staffan, I think you have been asked something. Somebody else, sir?
I will start with the second. The first, I'm not quite sure I catch the whole question, but the closed doors, you asked about the closed doors. Yes, when the member states meet in the council, there is a lot of occasions the decision is taken in closed doors. So there is small opening sometimes, because they sometimes in informal ministerial meeting and even in ministerial meeting they invite at least us representing the civil society sometimes. But I think I should be fair to say that if you look for the proposal doing from the Commission, there is openness. I think it would be wrong to say that it is closed door. They have a lot of stakeholders conferences, consultations, online consultations. So I think there is a willingness more and more to be open, and the Commission needs the input from you and from society. The first question was about who is EU citizens or what?
No. What is the EU's concept of European?
You are the future.
Yes, excuse me, let me make myself very clear. The EU. Thank you, please. I wanted to make this very clear because it's very important for me. What is the EU's government concept of an unemployed European youth? Does this include these people, young youths migrating from America, from Asia, and from Africa to study in Europe and then to make some connections, to intermarry and all of that? So when decisions are made behind closed doors, do the EU government include this category of youth?
Cannot take the responsibility of the whole world.
I will be very clear. If you look for education and youth, of course, the responsibility for governments, for Commission and the Council is, of course, European Union's citizens. But I have also underlined very clearly, because we have a situation where because this year is dedicated to citizens. And I have this week said that, okay, we have to remember, there is a lot of people, thousands, we call them non-regulated not sometimes refugees are coming from asylum reason, sometimes what we call irregulated or migrants. And of course we have also to take this into consideration and to keep the right for human rights even for these populations. Then I hope that the European Union also play an important role when it comes to the external relations, the neighborhood countries, the Euromed countries, and that we also play the political role in this sense.
Okay, thank you. His Lordship, please.
It's an unusual way to describe me, but I just wanted to pick up on the point that Laura made back in there as we went round the panel about degrees, because I think that while there will always be a role for some kind of formal assessment that allows institutions and companies to easily sort people out by their qualifications, just because of numbers, and also I suppose people themselves judge their progress, and there will also always be a role for periods of concentrated academic study, partly for the reasons that Emil mentioned about the development of critical powers and so on in graduates, I think the nature of higher education, and maybe even school education as well, is going to have to change quite radically in the information age that we're now living in, with the speed of access to information and the speed of change. And that perhaps picks up the point made by the representative from Mexico about how do people going to be motivated. However they're going to be motivated, they're going to have to be motivated throughout their lives to update their skills and their knowledge. And there's going to have to be a hunger for that at all levels of society. And the great potential is through the fact that everybody has access to that, and that someone in a village in Zambia has the same access to the internet, if they can get on the internet, they can same access to the internet and all the information on it as you have here at the ICD. So that access is there, but I think the motivation and the flexibility of career systems and education systems to encourage people to constantly update their knowledge and go seeking new knowledge and develop skills and take personal responsibility for that, not be forced to stay on at school or forced to go to university or college by others, but actually have the willingness and the desire throughout your life to develop in that way. And that is a big cultural change that I think is coming and has to come.
Thank you. I'm asking who from the panel wants to comment on them. Please.
I just wanted to say that I was reading in the English paper, The Telegraph, last month. They had a competition. It was the £10,000 Henry Jackson initiative to tackle youth unemployment. And I would like to read a small piece from the winning essay by a young man called Max Kirby. And he says, 1 in 5 young adults in Britain is unemployed, more than twice the rate for the workforce as a whole. And temporarily, I hope, I'm one of them. Yet, I am convinced there has never been a better time to be young. The world is bursting with opportunity. Every day, new inventions answer questions that we had never thought to ask. It's time to tackle your unemployment in that spirit. As Einstein said, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. Generation Y should stop asking, why me? And start asking, why not? First, we must adopt the right mindset. Positive in outlook and global in ambition. For optimism stems not from denying change, but from recognizing the possibilities it presents. The job for life has gone, but so has the tedium of career monogamy. International competition has intensified, but also opened up new opportunities abroad.
Thank you very much. I think it's quite close to a closing remark, I would say. Mark Donford is agreeing, so I have to say many thanks to the panelists and also to you. Okay, ladies has always the last word.
No, in the beginning of the morning conference, there was a question what the young people can do. Not as far as their job is concerned, but generally participating. So I would like just to announce you something, and if you want, whatever you want, I can give you some more details then. There is an initiative, I support an initiative of a group of young students and young people from 7 countries who try to bring to the European Parliament under to the Citizens Initiative with 1 million signatures, a clause saying that education budget must be excluded from the national deficit. So it is a lot of work has been done in order to give motivations to countries which are below the average of the European Union's member states' budget to push their budget to educational reasons. So, if you are interested, we can discuss and you can participate in this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much also for this activity. Hopefully the money is then used really for education. I think you know how governments are doing. Okay, so many thanks to the participants, to the panelists, and I may say the advice to ICD would be to continue on the question, how is labor markets handled? And what is the education doing in this direction might be a next step after this. And I'm quite sure that the organizers here of ICD will continue in this. As far as I was looking to the program, we are continuing at 3:30. Am I right? Okay. What?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, okay. More break. Thank you very much. All the best.